Well, Scott, in the United States, there's just no credentialing for people who comment on foreign affairs. There's any old guy, you can put him on TV and flash up terrorism expert under his name, and people will buy what they have to say.
Hey, you're telling me.
Yeah,
Check me out.
I did a program, a radio program there in Texas a couple years ago, and the interviewer was on the right, and he said that those guys from think tanks in Washington came out to Texas and had said that the U.S. was going to be nuclear bombed by some Islamic terror organization within the next 6 months. And it's nonsense. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I actually told him, I said, look here, I'm not a rich man, but I'll take a bet.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is something that's really important, and it's a little hobby horse of mine, too, is how, especially the right wing, but pretty much everybody in this society, they're just connected to whatever narrative they want, and its relation to the truth can be the most tenuous or even non-existent thing. I mean, I did a show not long ago where the caller called in and said, yeah, but everybody knows the weapons of mass destruction are in Syria, and that Saddam was going to attack us if we didn't, and, people are still stuck in the talking points of 2002 out there.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I think, if they were in Syria, we should invade. But
obviously, it's the only solution.
The thing about the Pashtun people is that most Americans don't delve into British history or British imperial history, and so they don't know the whole history of the discourse about the Pashtuns. But those were hill people, and they were armed and tribally organized, and the British Empire in India just never really subdued them. And there was all this anxiety about the frontier all through the British Raj in India. And they construed them really as, people who might overturn the whole thing. Churchill wrote about them that, there's this peculiar hybrid because they had the latest in military technology at the turn of the last century. They had the breech-loading rifles, which, you didn't have to stand up to reload those, so they were a real advantage in guerrilla warfare. And so Churchill said that they were, these savages, but with the latest in high-tech military equipment, and that they were particularly dangerous for that reason. And I just thought, well, gee, you could lift what Churchill was saying and just put it on the front page of the Washington Post today, and there would be no difference, because now the threat that the crazies on the right are bringing up is that the Taliban could take over Pakistan. And then Pakistan has nuclear weapons, so you'd have nuclear-armed Taliban, and wouldn't that be like the world's worst security nightmare? Except that, the entire scenario makes no sense whatsoever. Pakistan is a huge country. The Pashtuns are a minority there. The Taliban are a minority of a minority. And they're not. The Pakistani military is over 500,000 troops. They've got tanks. They've got helicopter gunships. They've got planes. So the Taliban are not going to sweep into Islamabad and take over the Pakistani government. It's just impossible. And in fact, Pakistani military just mopped up the Swat Valley with the Taliban in the past 2 months, which, supposedly this campaign in Swat was something that our national security depends vitally on. Do you think that most Americans even knew what was going on?
No, clearly not. And the part that caught my attention more than anything else, I guess I'm even mildly surprised, at least, to hear you term it as some sort of success. I never saw that. What I saw was 3 million refugees, and in my imagination, consequences that are to flow from that into our future that, can't be named specifically, but certainly will be horrible for, all concerned.
Well, I think there was a real danger, as you say, Scott, that this sending the Pakistani infantry and Air Force into a populated region like the Swat Valley could have turned out really badly, and we don't know, of course, still what the final results will be. But what I would say is, from following the Pakistani press and satellite TV and so forth, is that so far we've caught a break, because the Taliban in the Swat Valley were really, really unpopular, both there and in Pakistan at large, and became more unpopular, actually, over time. so that the public really supported this thing. And, of course, the people who were displaced, the 2 million you were talking about, were very upset to have to be living in tents and so forth. On the other hand, a certain number of them, were already having their lives disrupted by the Taliban, like the women were being forbidden to go shopping and stuff like that. So now, the last couple of weeks, about 400,000 people have returned to the one of the main cities in Swat, Mingora. And, they're starting to try to get their lives going again. And it seems like the Pakistani military is going to just garrison the town to prevent the Taliban from coming back. And so, yeah, they've had their lives disrupted in a big way. And it's estimated that, hundreds of millions of dollars will be needed to restore schools and get the economy going again. On the other hand, the international community and the Pakistani government are saying they will do that. So assuming that they do it and they do it relatively efficiently, which are big assumptions, we could get out of this particular one with our skin intact.
Well, it'd be nice anyway. I won't hold my breath for that. I wanted to note here, too, that, and this is a really great article, Armageddon at the Top of the World, Paranoia About the Pashtuns. It's on antiwar.com today. And you quote extensively from Churchill's history of a war that took place around the turn of the last century there. And I'm sorry for laughing at this, I guess, sort of, but I thought it was funny how in all of his writing, all of his metaphors and analogies are all to different enslaved people that the British Empire had conquered. So he says, they're as wild as the Zulus, but crafty as the Red Men, and they aim as good as the Boers. And all of his different examples of how dangerous these horrible Pashtun people are were, examples of other victims of British imperialism. And I wonder, and I think you point this out in your article too, or at least Tom does in his introduction here, something about the irony of America marching in here with the British, same in Iraq, same in Afghanistan. These are places where the British have been over and over again, and now instead of being the example of the people who prove that you can throw off British rule, here we are trying to reinstall it in a sense, at least probably in the eyes of a lot of our victims.
Yeah, it's really the 21st century has seen the United States increasingly throw in ideologically with empire, and it's really a remarkable turnaround because the discourse that Churchill uses is really the discourse of the master race. I mean, the Anglo-Saxons were supposed to rule those places because they were superior and they provided good governance, and the savages, which he uses the word, are opposing them because they're uncivilized, and that was the discourse of the Victorian age, and it is a racist discourse, quite frankly. And it's now back. The Taliban are being depicted as these irrational, savage peoples who, nevertheless, somehow could reach out and harm us. So they have to be subdued by our own high-tech militaries, and it makes a justification then for 90,000 U.S. and NATO troops being in a country like Afghanistan. In fact,
it's like, what would George Carlin say about this? He would cut through the jargon and say it in English. These people are powerful enough to resist our occupation of their land. Therefore, they're a threat to you at night in your jammies, safe in Austin, Texas, or wherever you live.
Yeah, exactly. And Mark Sageman, who had been a CIA station chief in Pakistan in the late 80s, wrote a book, Understanding Terrorist Networks, in which he pointed out that there have been virtually no incidents of international terrorism conducted by Afghans.
Well, we'll see about that for the future, right? I mean, this is how you create new enemies.
We might be able to get it going if we try hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. That's all we got to do is work on the problem, and then we'll have another excuse to take the war to Rakistan or whichever place is next there.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Juan Cole, I really appreciate your time on the show today.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Scott. And just to say that there is a chapter in the book on Pakistan, Afghanistan, if people want background.
Right on. And again, that book is Engaging the Muslim World by Juan Cole. The blog is Informed Comment. And, of course, he teaches history at the University of Michigan. Thanks again, Juan.
Okay, thank you. Take care.